I had this feeling of dread that I've never felt in my life, and I didn't know what it was from. Later afternoon, got the kids, went around tubing, and then his brother was on the tube, and he started screaming out, "He's dead, he's dead." But it was so unbelievably not real, and yet it's so intensely real. I needed to call Kimberly, his mom, and the doctor handed me this phone, and I said, "What do I say?" And he looked at me and he said,
This is the Lost Child podcast, where we delve into the topic of losing a child. These are real stories from real people sharing some of their darkest moments with us and their journey from that fateful experience. We have a guest with us here today, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story. Let's dive into the podcast. Well, Scott, thank you very much for being on the podcast and coming here and telling us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Blake and Camille.
Yeah. Just to get started, like to jump right in, can you tell us about your son's name, who he is, that ended up passing away?
Yes. So my boy's name was Keaton, Keaton.
Okay.
Keaton for us means where hawks fly.
Oh, wow.
So we have a special connection now with hawks and feathers. Got a little hawk feather hanging from my rearview mirror that was given to me by somebody who was allowed to have hawk feathers. So yeah, that's Keaton Scott. Yeah.
And there's a tie there then, because his middle name was Scott, and your middle name
my middle name is Scott.
So
that's what I go by.
Okay.
So yeah,
there's a direct tie there then.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep.
And did you already know the whole like hawk setup thing with Keaton beforehand, or is it something you named him that and then found out afterwards, or was it intentional?
Around feathers? No.
Yeah.
No, we liked the name Keaton.
Yeah.
And then we found out afterwards the thing about hawks.
Yeah.
So, and it was a cute thing until he passed. And then it took on a lot of additional meaning for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about Keaton? What was he like growing up?
Keaton was a bundle of energy. I mean, all little kids are to some degree, right? But he was always in motion. That's just kind of his thing. In fact, one day his mom was like, she commented on his energy and said, "Boy, you've got a lot of energy." And he goes, "Yeah, I've got ADH energy." She's like, "What?" Like ADHD, right? And she goes, "You have what?" He goes, "I have 88 energy." And he was saying 88 as a number, like out of 100, right? I've got 88 energy, but it came through ADH energy. Yeah. So that was, he was a bundle of motion. He was also thoughtful. There's just sometimes he would look into things and was a very thoughtful child, but he was a ray of sunshine. Yeah.
How old was he when he passed?
He was almost 6. He was just a few weeks shy of being 6.
Here's also a reminder to subscribe and follow this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. Now, back to the podcast. And then also for some more context, I want to ask more questions about Keaton, but how long ago did the death occur?
Yeah, so Keaton died 11 and a half years ago.
Oh, wow.
So we've been through a lot of milestones.
Yeah. What's some of the favorite memories that you have about Keaton? Any of that age range from 0 to 6? I mean, those are some interesting times, from learning to walk, learning to ride a bike, and running, and just the crazy adventures of a 6-year-old boy is awesome. So.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite memories, a few weeks before he died. So the company that I had in parades in the summertime, we had an old Model A Ford that was restored. It was beautiful, convertible, blue, light kind of baby blue. And so we would have that in the parades as a promotion for the company. And Keaton was my little buddy. We just liked doing everything together. We'd go to the store, go to Home Depot, do all those things together. And so got up early in the morning. He went with me, went down to the parade, got the car set up, and I was driving it, and he was sitting there in the seat next to me until he wanted to get out and pass out candy and the little balls that we were passing out. But so I remember him doing that. I'd like to ride bikes, and Keaton, I mounted a seat in front of me. Instead of the one on the back is right there. And so we would ride, and he's right there in between my legs in front of me. We could talk and talk about things and just enjoy the ride. So that was something that's really fun. We built a house, and I did a lot of the yard installation, landscaping work. And so I had this skid steer that, you drive back and forth like that. And he would sit up there. Well, he thought it was kid steer. So he'd go, "Oh, can I go drive the kid steer?" And I was like, "Yeah, we made that just for you kids." That piece of equipment. So
That's funny.
yeah, those are some of the memories that stand out. There's another one too, back to the hawks piece. So we had big glass windows on our back, and there were trees out in the back. And every now and then a bird would hit the window, and sometimes they'd bounce off and fly away, and other times they would die, and I'd find them on the deck. And just about a week and a half before Keaton died, I went out on the back deck, and there was a hawk there.
Wow!
It was the only time that a hawk had gone there, and I went out to pick it up and dispose of it like usual. And I just had this thought, no, go get Keaton. And so I went and got him and brought him out there. And we just sat there, and we touched the hawk's feathers and his claws and his beak, and we just talked about life and death a little bit. And after he died, I realized that was something to indicate that the hawk has fallen. So that was a tender memory that we had there.
Did that become impactful right after the death, or was it like over time it's become even more impactful?
No, it was right after.
Right after.
Yeah, that was in that, realized that right away, and I was able to share that with my wife and family members. And it was meaningful.
Wow.
Yeah, it kind of was a foretelling of what was to come for us.
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell us a little bit about what actually happened and how Keaton died?
Yeah. So my parents, many years before, had gotten a houseboat, and so every summer, all the kids and their kids would come, and we'd spend a week on the houseboat. So we raised the kids at the lake, and we very familiar with it, very safety oriented, all those pieces. But that summer we went on our trip, and there were some of his siblings were older and married, and so there were some family members that had to leave a couple of days before the trip was going to end. And so you take them into the marina, and then the day before, his mom was just feeling antsy. I remember saying, "I feel like I'm going to crawl out of my skin. I need to go. I can't stay."
Yeah.
She just had this "I need to go" feeling. It was just she couldn't shake it. And so there was another couple that was going to be leaving the day before the trip was ending, and so she decided to, or actually 2 days before, so she decided to go with them. And so she went out on the front deck of the houseboat and sat on the cooler there with Keaton. And she said, "Hey, Keaton, I'm going to go home today, and you can either go home with me or you can stay here." And she says that he kind of thought through it. He was like, "Oh, I could go home and play with my friend Wesley, and I could play with my Beyblades, and I could..." Just going through all the reasons why he would want to go home. And then she said he just stopped and paused. "No, I think I'll stay." She was like, "Okay." So she went home that day. The next day, woke up, and there was the final couple that was leaving early.
Yeah.
So I got in the speedboat, took him into the marina, and I had this feeling of dread that I've never felt in my life. It was just this overwhelming feeling, and I had the word at the time. It wasn't looking back. I feel this dread, like this depressive, heavy, weighty feeling of dread, and I didn't know what it was from. And so went into the marina and dropped them off, and I called my wife and just said, I told her what I was feeling. I said, "I don't know what it's about, but I just have this. And so we talked through it. There wasn't anything to do. So I went back out. The kids wanted to go out and play, go tubing and whatever. And I just didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go out. And so we stayed in the houseboat, played some games, watched a movie. The afternoon passed, and finally, later afternoon, I thought, okay, this is the last day. We're leaving in the morning. I can't disappoint them.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. So I rallied myself and got the kids. We're around tubing, and in the tubing, you're doing 10, 12 miles an hour, doing figure eights, creating some wakes. Keaton's older brother was back on the tube, and you try to give him a bit of a fun tube ride, and I'm driving, and I'm, look back at the tube, look up front, we're going just back and forth. And I remember looking up, and Keaton, life jacket on, was sitting in the front. It's a deep V hole, so there's a nice seat there that's safe, and he's sitting next to his older sister. And I remember both of them kind of bounced over one of the waves, nothing unusual. I looked back up, and he wasn't there. And I was like, where's Keaton? And his older sister said, he just bounced out. It just happened. And in that moment, I remembered feeling a little bump. And hadn't registered it because of my attention on it. And so I spun the boat around really quickly, and we're looking for him, not seeing him yet. And then his brother was on the tube, and he started screaming out, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. And I dove in, got there. He was there, and the surrealness of it, it's it's CPR, the emergency measures, get him and swim back to the swim deck on the back of the boat, and okay, got to get him up so we can see what we need to do for him. And so his older sister, she helped me get him up so that I could get up in and put a towel around him. And it's that absolute dissonance. This is not real. And the reality of it, sitting side by side and trying to know and then looking and knowing that he's gone. So I sat in the back of the boat, on the back bench, and there was an older cousin on the boat. I was the only, the older daughter was over 18, but I was over, anyways, the older cousin drove the boat back in. We saw a boat there at a place where there's reception. We pulled up to him and said, we've had a fatality. Will you? And it was like I was outside of my body. There's no, I watched myself say the words that I could not possibly fathom saying. And I said, we call the Rangers. And then we headed in. The Ranger boat met us. We took him in to the marina. The kids went back to the houseboat to tell my parents what had happened. And so, there in that small little medical center at the marina, the poor doctor was there witnessing, my grief.
Did you snap out of that, out of person experience and I realize it's not necessarily an out of person experience. It was, you're still there, but you're almost, the reality of it's so
You're
weird.
in shock.
It's so weird. It's so weird to even explain.
Mm-hmm.
But so did you snap out of that at some point in that little medical center, or?
Yeah. I mean, I was present.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But it was so unbelievably not real.
Yeah.
I look at him, and he was perfect.
Yeah.
He was perfect. And I just, remember sitting and looking at him, like, how can this be? He's perfect. How can this be? This can't be. And I'm alone in the room with him, and it can't be. And so, it was just a very unreal, and yet it's so intensely real. It's this very strange juxtaposition of the most unreal and the most intensely real thing that I've ever experienced. I remember exiting the room and going outside, and it was nighttime now, and looking up at the stars, feeling so small and powerless, and just realizing that there are realities beyond what all of my wishes, all of my hopes and desires. There are just realities. And realizing all, and as obvious as this sounds, it had meaning and impact to me at the time that we all come into this life through birth. Everybody comes the same, small variations, but we all come through birth. But our ways of leaving, we all will leave, but they are all so individual and so different. I know people who have also lost a child, and they're all so different. Some after illness, and mine sudden and unexpected, and they're just all so different. And there's no better or worse. There's to it, but they're just all so different. So that was one of the hardest moments. Also was there in the medical center. It was just the doctor, me. Center would have been closed if we went there, and after we got there, and I needed to call Kimberly, his mom. And the doctor handed me this phone, and I looked at him and I said, "What do I say?" And he looked at me and he said, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Which was the best thing he could have said, because there's no way he could, And so I just, again, surreal. I don't know how I even said the words.
Do you remember that conversation?
Oh,
like,
yes.
Were you just like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, how did it actually start? Take us through that.
I called her phone and she didn't answer. And her mother lived with us. And so I'll try her. And so I tried her phone, and I got her, and she answered the phone, and I said, "Hi." I said, "Are you with Kimberly?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "I need to talk to her." So she handed the phone to Kimberly, and they were at a store shopping.
Oh, gosh.
And she got on the phone. She's, cheerful. "Hi." And I said, "I don't know how to say this, but we've lost him." And she was like, "What?" And the first thought she had was that it was his older brother. That was just what came to her mind. No thought that it could be Keaton. I just don't know why, but that's just the thought that came to her. And she goes, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Keaton, we've lost him." Just for me to picture what that must have been like for her, to hear those words. And a little detail about that. I mean, we're a blended family, and so Keaton was our one child that we had together.
Oh, wow.
And so, and she just said, "Oh my God. Oh my God." And of course, they just walked out of the store, and we talked, and I don't remember the next part. That's where my memory ends.
Okay.
I gave her the details, and I don't remember the call ending. So that part's gone, but that was the phone call. Then, of course, all family, extended family, people, everybody that was not there came down that night, drove down.
From a logistics standpoint, you still had the houseboat out wherever, plus all the other boats. Did you have to deal with all of that? Or was it just like, I'm hopping in the truck and I'm going back home?
Thankfully, I didn't have to deal with that. Like I said, all the family on both sides, they all got together and then caravan down that night. Those of us that were there, we got a whole block there at the marina. They had a little hotel, motel, and we got a block of rooms. And once the coroner came and picked up Keaton, then we went to the motel, and somewhere during the night, everybody came to the rooms. And so the next day there were family members that went out, took care of all the logistics and, handled all that. And we just, then we all went home that following day.
I just think it's super interesting that you said you had this like dread come upon you. It's like you already knew, but you didn't know.
I had no idea. I thought maybe it was okay. I'm going to taking the houseboat in the next day. There's going to be some mishap. I'm going to kind of, wreck the houseboat or something. I didn't know what it was, but I had no thought of we're going to lose somebody.
I think it's easy for like the audience and other people to just be like, well, you should have like followed that thought or whatever. And I say it, the reason why I say that is I'm in the same place that you are, right?
Yeah.
I was racking my brain with like, why didn't I get any of these thoughts of like, don't do that? Or even like the story you presented with Keaton of like, hey, do you want to go home with your mom? Oh yeah, I could play with my friends and the Beyblades and all these things. No, I want to stay, right?
Yeah.
And your brain just racks all of those things. However, the reality is we're at where we're at. And from my perspective, I would just say it sucks that you had that like depressive or that bad feeling, but there wasn't any direction with it either. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's hard.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I actually hold it a little bit differently.
Okay.
Because the next morning at the motel, we were there and family members are together and there's some prayers and things. And I had come in my mind a visual image of a hand, which I interpret as the hand of God, but a hand taking Keaton and being with him and pulling him under the boat. And the way that I hold that is that and the feeling of dread that I had and the hawk. And this is one of those things that does not make the pain go away.
Yeah.
But there's some sort of design, some sort of purpose. This was as it was meant to be. And that those things were there as indicators to me that this was known. This was known, that this was the direction, this is what's going to happen. One of the real things that, Camille, you and I have related on is that we were the drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a parent in general, and I'll just speak as a father, job number one is protect your children. That's my role.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And I was the one that created the waves, that bounced him out, that took his life. And so I had to go through a lot of wrestling with that, a lot of holding of that. And the fact that I had these signs, if you will, that this was coming, it's given me comfort and helped me to realize that it needed to be that way. And there's been some spiritual experiences since that, it had to be this way. This was the design. This was the plan. And I don't know why I would have agreed to any such thing. What was I thinking? But I just as my own spiritual belief, I hold that we have participation, co-creation in the experiences that we go through here, the things that we encounter. So to me, that dread was not a warning to get me to do something different.
Yeah.
It was more of this is not just some random chance accident that just happened for no reason. That's how that is held in my heart and my mind.
Thank you. And my comment on it wasn't necessarily that's my view of it either.
I understand.
It's that from like an external, I could see how people would be like, oh, why didn't you X, Y? And it's like, well, there wasn't any direction with it. Mm-hmm. And if anything, like you're saying, it's your soul, your being almost knew that there was going to be this thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So how did you deal with Keaton's loss, like the weeks after, the months after? How'd you cope with all that?
Well, as you know, at first time is just, it's all changes, and it's minute by minute, but the minutes are hours and hours are minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's really a strange thing.
Yeah.
That feeling of this can't be real lasted for quite a while. Surreal, unreal, not real. I just remember, no, damn it, no. It just, the denial, couldn't wrap my head around it, even though I was living it. Yeah. Just not even able to wrap my head around it. I don't know why I did this or where it came from, but I just had a knowing within myself that my path was to face it fully.
What do you mean by face it fully?
If this was a cup, so to speak, of experience that I had to drink, I was going to drink every drop. I wasn't going to distract myself. I wasn't going to numb myself. I was going to be fully in it. If I had to go through this hellish experience, then I wanted every bit of it. And that's not saying that's the right way to do it or anything. There's no right or wrong. And that can be overwhelming. I spent hours and days sitting in his room, just sitting, working through, feeling, grieving, just in the depths of it. I was in a position with work where I didn't have to go in because I was one of the owners and I could spend time. So I had that blessing, but it was, I embraced it.
Did that break down over a period of time, business wise, that you were owner, this whole thing happened? Or were they fine with you, like taking your time to do stuff? They were fine with me taking my time. And then there came a point, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you how long it was where I'd start to go in a little bit, and start to re-engage. So that happened there. A real part of my experience, though, was that I've always wanted to be in life. I'm not, I've enjoyed living. I had no interest in being here anymore after Keaton died.
Yeah.
I had 6 other kids, a wife, family. And so I didn't tell anybody this. I didn't want them to feel bad, like, oh, they're not as important and all those things. But it didn't. Yes, they were. And I wanted to be here for them. But I just didn't have any interest in living anymore, in doing life. I didn't have any inclination to harm myself.
Yeah.
But I just didn't care anymore. And during the those months, I remember reading a lot of books, anything I could find on people who had visionary experiences with life before this life or life after this life or just anything. I just wanted to read, what is there? I had my own beliefs, But now I was like, are my beliefs even real? I don't know what's real anymore. And so I was desperate for anything. And so I would read and I'd be in it. Had some counseling from somebody that we knew. And one of the things I remember the counselor saying was that these types of things there's a high percentage of divorce after losing a child. And he cautioned us or advised us to let us have our own experience. I responded to it differently. I wanted to talk. I wanted to engage with people because I wanted to process and get insight and anything to find comfort, just grasping for comfort.
Hey, we'll jump back to the podcast in just a second. If you love what we're doing here and want to support us, we started a Patreon account. It's a platform where you can sign up for a monthly subscription to help support our podcast, to help share these stories with the world. In the video description, you can find a link to our Patreon account. So please help support the podcast and help support us by visiting the link in that video description. We thank you. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Kimberly, on the other hand, she didn't want anything to do with people. She just, wanted to be in her own space. So we did things differently, which is great. I remember though, a couple months afterwards, we stopped to get something to eat. And I was sharing with her my latest insight, some pearl of comfort that I thought. And she finally looked at me, and she doesn't remember saying it this way, but she looked, as I remember it, she looked at me and goes, "You have got to stop."
Yeah.
I was like, she goes, I'm not feeling what you're saying. It doesn't resonate with me. I don't want to hear it. You've got to stop. And of course, my feelings were a little bit hurt in the moment. And I was just like, okay, I can do that. And I didn't retort to it or anything. I just said, okay. And just, my ego was bruised a little bit. I'm just trying to be a good, husband and trying to, my intention is, but it wasn't landing. So that's fine. Mm-hmm. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to really create more of a solo experience for myself. And I'm going to let her have hers. I'm not here to fix hers. I'm not here to make her feel better. I withdrew from that. And that was one of the healthiest things that we could have done. It's not that we didn't share anymore. I let her take the lead on when she had a thought or an insight, but it gave her space. Mm-hmm. She needed to grieve. She needed to come into her own healing herself. She needed to go through that process. And then, she could share, and then we could have some back and forth. But an interesting thing came out of that, and that is that I came into taking ownership for my experience and what I wanted it to look like, feel like. Obviously, there were parts of it that were just out of my control and on autopilot, but there really was a sense of accountability to myself for whatever my experience looked like. And that was a pivotal piece, I think, of my journey. Was my experience is mine. I'm taking ownership of it and releasing her, giving her space to have her experience. And that, has been a piece actually that's come through in relationships since then. Just being able to do that, release others to theirs and stop managing it, stop trying to control it, stop trying to be there. Yeah, we show up as an influence, but the energy is one of letting them have their own experience with that. Anyways, that feeling of, and I was back to work within, the first 6 months, and the feeling of not wanting to be here just was persistent and consistent. Yeah. Christmas came, and none of us wanted to be around for Christmas. That was the worst thought, so parents, siblings, extended family, 25 of us went to Hawaii, spent Christmas there in Hawaii. It was a pretty lackluster Hawaii trip, but at least we weren't at home. That was just what felt good to us. Mm-hmm. We got home, and, interesting looking at the kids, different kids process things differently. The daughter that helped me get him out of the boat was independent, had been for a couple of years, living on her own and doing her thing. And she was going through such a shock and trauma process that she needed to move back home for 6 months. So she did. She moved back home for 6 months. Have another daughter that didn't want to be around home at all. She just didn't want to do the friends, didn't want to think about it, deal with it. And so there's no one right path. It's got to be when each of us feels or what it feels like is right for us, and really checking in on that with ourselves and honoring that in each other, because as families go through it, everybody's going to be different with that. But we go back from Hawaii. It's nighttime. The only my older daughter that moved back home, only she and I were up. And that was the first time I had put voice to, I don't care about living anymore. I just don't care about life. I don't really want to be here anymore. And I felt safe enough to share that with her. And I had an interesting experience. As soon as I got done telling her that, I just had this knowing that came into me that, and this is just part of my own personal spiritual belief, is that I, existed before this life and I'll exist afterwards. And that I had wanted very specifically and intentionally to be here and to have this experience. And I chose it, and I worked to get here. And it's just this knowing that came through my system. Just, I know that I wanted to be here. And I wanted to be here for myself. It wasn't contingent upon Keaton being here or anything else. I wanted to be here and have this experience. And then right as soon as that knowing came through, I had this flood in every cell. It felt like it was every cell of my body that was just like, and I'm not going to waste it. Not a minute of it. And all the things that I love to do went through my mind. I love to bike and hike and tennis and gym and just do, back and do work and do, relation. All the things just flooded like a fast forward movie through my mind. And I was like, let's go. And I've never had that feeling since. It was a very powerful moment for me, after the 6 months of not wanting to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And going back to the relationship with Kimberly, would you say that you guys had a pretty solid relationship before Keaton's passing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how did it transform after Keaton died?
Yeah, it had those pieces. In a lot of ways, there was this connectivity that came.
Yeah.
We were the only two people on the planet that were his parents.
Yeah.
Even though there was an honoring that your experience is separate from mine and different and unique to mine, they were the most parallel of anybody else. Family, friends want to come, and there's comfort and just grieving in those pieces, but we shared that common bond. And so, and I feel like we both went through the into healing and what I call wholeness, around his death and life. We both went into it fairly well. Yeah. And so there was a connectivity around it that happened.
And then take us from that 6 month period after Christmas where you had that kind of no, I want to experience all the joys in life. Where did you go from there? Not necessarily from a relationship, but your story, did you start doing some of those things again, playing tennis, biking, hiking?
Yeah.
All of it.
Let me circle back a second for, during that, and especially during that 6 month period, there's just another thing that's coming up.
Yeah.
Your world, my experience, my world stopped.
Yeah.
When Keaton died. I mean, it literally felt like the earth stopped turning. And there's all of the outpouring of love and connection and care from so many people. And, the days, the week, the 2 weeks, the weeks after, and then everybody starts to go back into their own lives.
Yeah.
And there's still, outreach and things like that, but my world didn't. It's like, and there was just this makes no logical sense, but how can everyone just go back to living life when the world is not even turning for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense. There was no, how could they? It was just, it doesn't make sense that their world is still turning, but mine isn't. It's an interesting thing. And I've thought about that in the years since, of how I'm going through my daily life and somebody's world is not turning anymore. And just an awareness. I don't know. There was just an experience that I had that Kimberly and I both shared. It's our world stopped, And then there's that process of it starting again. Mine happened very, in that moment when I was talking with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty rare. I think most people's, it's a piece at a time. It's slow, sometimes intentionally, painfully, whatever it looks like, to try to get your world to start turning again. So yeah, I did. I engaged with all the things that I love to do. And, that I think was very helpful and healthy. Again, that's not available for everybody. But yeah, I really engaged. It was with an energy that of wanting to do it, wanting to be here, which I think is probably uncommon when people have had loss. I don't know how your experiences have been, but
yeah, I don't think so for me. I haven't had that knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've definitely used some of the things that I love to try to help me process everything that's going on in my head.
Yeah.
Right? Like mountain biking or going hiking or going and playing sports or something like that. Just doing something that I know I enjoy. That it can be one of two things. Either it can be a distraction from, like, for 1 hour, I can focus on this one thing and I don't have to focus on anything else. Or it also sometimes just allows me to say, I'm doing the thing that I love, but my mind is like just running with, like working through all of those thoughts, everything about it, what you could have done different, how you feel now, what I should be doing now. Right. So I actually use some of those activities that I love to help me process it and cope with what's going on in my life.
Yeah. I think that's real and healthy. There's this piece, I ended up deciding to sell my portion of the company that I was in and go back to graduate school again.
What was the company like? What did you guys do?
It was a natural food retail company. We had a chain of stores.
Oh, okay.
And so sold out of that and went back to school and got a master's degree in clinical psychology. How Keaton's passing influenced that decision is a good question. It was just something that I had another knowing, this is what I'm going to do.
Was it a spur of the moment thing, or was that something that came over time? Like, I should go back to school. If I do go back to school, I should do this. Or was like, no, you need to like get a
and it was some years later. I think it was 5 years later when I had that feel, but it was in the moment.
Okay.
It was just like, this is a shift I'm going to make. And wasn't an aspiration that I'd had at all over time. Just like, let's do this thing. So I did that, and I think some of the experience though with Keaton translated has helped me in the work as I work with people through whatever process they're going through, and that is this awareness that I actually have sovereignty over my experience. I get to choose. I get to feel into and decide what I want to do with my experience, whatever it's relating to in life. There are parts of our experience that just come up automatically, but I even get to decide how to hold that. And so, learning that I have that has been a powerful part of my, I think, healing in my process. Trying to find language to wrap around healing, what that looks like is challenging. But some languaging that I felt around that is that when I feel whole within myself, a wholeness within me, kind of an at oneness with me, that healing seems to be almost a natural process that comes out of that. And part of how I look at wholeness is actually embracing my experience. You know, I remember in the days, weeks, months after Keaton died, it was like, how am I supposed to be feeling? What should I be feeling? You know, if I'm having a good day, does that mean I don't care as much, or I'm lost touch with it? I got to be in the pain all the time so that he has meaning, right? I've got to hold that. I've got to hang on to it, and certainly those things. But those are some of the thought processes. Well, how should I be feeling? What does this look like to other people?
Yeah.
If I'm out, you know, doing something that looks, you know, like I'm not in grief and mourning, how does that look?
Yeah.
I just had a thought now. I guess that's why people would, in some cultural systems, wear black for a year or a period of time so that it looks like they're grieving properly.
Yeah.
You know, that's a whole process that I went through in my thinking.
Another one that's been brought up by many different people is a lot of times culturally we equate the amount of grief or pain that we feel to the love that we have for our child.
Mm-hmm.
And those aren't actually equal. It doesn't mean if I go 10 years and I'm just somber and sad for 10 years that I loved my child more than you loved your child. That's not actually, it doesn't equate.
No.
Yeah.
I agree with you very, very much so. As I've interacted with people who have had loss and things like that, it's one of the things I've heard them say is, well, he or she would want me to go back into school, would want me to move forward, would want me to, you know, and so they find some comfort in that type of thinking. But yeah, but how should I feel? The only answer to that, in my experience, is according to me, how do I want to feel? And it's not that I can control it, but even when I'm in grief, let me be in grief. When I'm in pain, hold my pain. It shouldn't be there or not there. If I'm having some joy, let me have my joy. If I'm in peace, let me have my peace. To me, that idea of wholeness is being able to embrace all of my experience. No judgment, no shame, no shoulds, no how does this looks. It's just it is. And embrace it in its fullness and whatever it is and let myself experience it. And I think that was one of the beneficial outcomes of me deciding to embrace whatever came up, you know, very early on. And I mean, I don't live in the grieving anymore. I don't have that type of grief. I have missing. I obviously have some really tender moments, you know, and the tears still come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times I think of Keaton and there's missing, but he's good. I'm good, you know, and there's been real healing that's happened in that. If wholeness is defined by, I'll never have this missing little hole in my heart, well then no.
Yeah.
But I don't define it that way. I feel like having that missing, that longing, he'd be 17 now, you know? What would that be like? You know, he'd be senior in high school, getting ready for college or whatever, you know, just, you know, that'll always be there, but I can hold that and still feel whole.
What's some of the work that you put in to become whole? Like, did you seek out different therapists or anything that way? Is it more like because you went and got your master's degree in psychology that all of the classes you took, you kind of like related back to Keaton's death and how you're trying to work through all this stuff? Like, what things did you actually do?
Yeah, I think everything plays a part, you know, a role. The threads weave through into the fabric of what my experience of healing and wholeness is.
Yeah.
What I learned in psychology certainly did. I had some good counseling that helped me work with that and learn how to hold my experience, those types of things. There's some key principles that one is differentiation. That's I am an individual separate from others and learning to own my experience and not manage other people's experience, release them to theirs. Those are some key parts of it. There's a particular type of therapy or modality called somatic experiencing that I embraced personally and then use in working with people.
And did you learn that in school? Did you learn it after school?
Yeah, I learned that parts of it during, and then pursued a lot of education and training after school. But it's about being at one with your body and what it's experiencing, and being able to let whatever's coming up, pain, the anxiety, the heart, the pits, the heaviness, whatever comes up, being able to hold that and experience it. So,
if people wanted to learn more about that, but say it again. I didn't even know what it was.
Somatic experiencing.
Yeah. If they want to learn more about that, what's like a good resource that they could learn more about that?
So Peter Levine, he pioneered this work over 40 plus years.
Okay.
He's written a number of books. One of the ones that I like is In an Unspoken Voice.
Okay.
But he's got a number of them out there. So there's those books. There's also a website with Ergos Institute that people can find a somatic practitioner.
Oh, wow.
That they can use. And I think it's one of the most powerful tools. There are a lot of them in psychology, EMDR, ART. There are a lot of different ways that we can use to process, and they're good. The somatic experiencing is, I think, one of the better tools that we have available to us now. So I'd recommend that to anybody.
And when did you start seeking that out for your personal?
The somatic
help?
work?
Yeah.
3 to 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Started working with that.
Yeah. And did you see benefits from it like right away? Did it take a decent amount of work to get it? What?
Well, both. Okay. It's very simple and powerful right away. And it's also then a lifetime tool that a person can use beyond just the grief and mourning process. That's one of the things I like about it. It's not just a recovery tool. It's a way to experience all the things that come up in life.
Did you have somebody, like a practitioner, help you originally, like to kind of understand it and how it works and to know the different tools? Or did you kind of just learn about it on your own by reading books and stuff like that?
Yeah. So through some of my program, I became aware of it, and then I did my own study into it, reading and that. And then I went and had the training through the actual training through Peter Levine's courses.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
So, and then follow-up conferences, trauma conferences, things like that.
Cool.
With it.
Nice.
How has Keaton's death like impacted any of your relationships you had, like relationship as a husband, father, and friend? How has it impacted since Keaton's death about 10, 11 years ago?
That's a good question. I think the things that we've talked about of how to relate with self, which is really part of that work, right? With how to hold your own experience and feel it and relate to yourself in the midst of pain and grief. What does this mean about me to me? We relate to ourselves and our experiences. So I think that's been impacted quite a bit. And then that translates into relating to other people differently. So I've got a really beautiful little story. It's one of my favorite memories of Keaton.
Yeah.
He's, 18 months old, 2 years old. And he's sitting on the kitchen counter, and I'm doing my thing there. And he's, like they do, they just chatter away. He's just chattering away. And I'm doing my thing. And all of a sudden I realized he stopped talking. And so I looked up, and he was looking at me, just looking at me. And I could read the question in his eyes more powerfully than if he would have spoken it. And in his eyes, he was saying, "Are you listening to me? Are you hearing me?" And it's just, my whole system was like, "Oh yeah." And I just got down on his lap. I said, "Yeah, buddy. Oh yeah, that's so cool." And I just spent a few moments there. And that taught me a great deal. He was my teacher at 2 years old, that what we all want more than anything is to be seen, to be heard, to be considered, to be known. And he just wanted to know if I was listening, really there. Now, as parents, we can't walk around staring at our kids' eyes all day, right? We've got things to do. But what it taught me, and this was a part of our relationship, what it taught me was that we can just take moments. We can get down at their level, or with a spouse, or with a friend. And we can say, yeah, I hear you. I see you. That's been one of the most powerful things that have influenced relationships that I've had going forward. I mean, that was a real key foundational piece of the relationship I had with Keaton. So from that moment on, I made sure that I just had those little moments, and he knew. And so we had a relationship that was built on, he knew that I was there for him. He knew that I was attuned to him, that I would listen to him. Mm-hmm. Funny experience. He was 5. And he was like little boys like to do. He was kind of antagonizing his older sister, just bugging her and, hey, Keaton, come on, knock it off, buddy, that kind of thing. And he just kept going, And so finally I looked at him and I said, it looks like you're kind of struggling. He looks at me like, what do you mean? And I said, oh, well, you're just having kind of a hard time managing, governing yourself. He knew that word. So you have a hard time governing yourself. Like, okay. I said, I can help you out with that if you'd like. He's like, well, what do you mean? and I said, oh, I don't know. I could have you sit in time out for a few minutes if you think that would help. And he goes, no, I think I got it. And he did. He managed himself from there. But, we could have that kind of interaction.
Yeah.
So it affected his life, affected how I relate to people. And then certainly his death, this ownership piece, but everything from his life to his death has had an impact on it,
Mm-hmm. Kind of a good one-liner that I think of with that is, as a parent, sometimes you think our kids just want presence, but instead they want our presence, or they want us to be in their presence, right?
So true.
They want our time. They want our attention. They don't necessarily want things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you ask how Keaton's death has affected relationships and that going forward. It's not just his death. It's the whole combination of things. Mm-hmm. It certainly has accentuated the meaning that I give to relationships. Absence makes the heart feel things, right? And so it brings even parts of his life into greater focus. His absence does. There's things that I might have glossed over, or might have, things that spent time, like you say, you sift, you go through their life more because of their absence. Mm-hmm. And I pull those elements out, and they have an impact. So it's kind of a life and death thing, I think, in appreciating relationships, being present, being attuned, celebrating the wins, not always, well, do a little better. In other words, you're not good enough. No, that was great, but you could have done better. Just getting rid of those pieces, realizing the importance of touch. When you can't physically touch somebody anymore, you take your other kids and just, you can hold them a little bit longer, right? It's just a little bit more. You realize those moments are priceless. So touch, presence, having routines and rituals that are just part of life. But you see how important they are. I miss brushing and flossing his teeth every night. That was the thing I would do with him, I miss those things. And so now I see it with other people, other family members, friends, kids. I'm going, yeah, treasure these.
Have you seen yourself fluctuate in that? The reason why I ask is, personally, I think right after Sonny died, I was definitely just like, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Like, just be together, whether people are doing things that they shouldn't or not, or if they're acting out or whatever it is. I was just like, just be next to them. But now I've also felt like I've almost swung back the other way of also like, well, we still need to learn how to like get along with people. And yes, you shouldn't be throwing like something that breaks the window. Right. And so the reason why I asked that is, have you fluctuated in that almost love for relationships, or have you just like, bam, yeah, no, we just need to be present in all the things that we're doing?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I can see where, for a minute, it doesn't matter what anybody's doing.
Yeah.
You're just, come here.
Yes.
And then, well, there's some other things we need to include in life. And so I can see that. My fluctuation, I think, has been more between energy that I put into a relationship versus energy I put into myself.
Mm.
And so I've had some fluctuation there, some pendulum swinging. I've gone through some times where I've focused mostly just on me and put less out into relationships. And then, like talking with my other kids, has been like, yeah, we want more time with you. And I'm like, I want more time with you too. And so we'll swing the pendulum back.
Yeah.
But I've found sometimes, and I've just needed to work on me, going through different changes internally and working with my differentiation or my sense of self, my experience in life. Again, taking that ownership of what my experience is, taking that to heart, and really trying to work without and create the kind of experience I want in life. You ask how Keaton's death has affected relationships with people. It's affected the relationship I have with myself quite a bit.
Yeah.
I know more than ever that life is uncertain, unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
So learning to be comfortable with that uncertainty. I know there's a part of our psyche that wants control and predictability so that there's a felt safety that we have. Learning to feel safe within myself while fully embracing the uncertainty and lack of control that I don't have over so much of life. And relating to myself in the areas that I actually do have authorship, architectureship, if you will, being able to design what I want in my life experience, not knowing how much time I have.
Yeah.
What do I want to put in it? How do I want to navigate? What do I want in relationships? And doing some of that internal and relating to myself. So I've had some pendulum swing on that, and then learning to look back outward and, okay, let me connect more. Let me build more community. Let me connect more time-wise with my other kids,
Mm-hmm.
So there's been some pendulum swing and fluctuation on that.
Yeah. If you could go back to yourself, right, 10, 11 years ago, right after Keaton's accident and after his death, and you could just talk with yourself and give yourself words of encouragement or advice to help you, what would you say to yourself?
I think the biggest thing is I would sit and just look at myself in the eyes and just hold myself, look at myself. And then I would give myself just the longest hug. It would just hold me. I don't know that I would have a lot of advice. I think the reason why I would sit there and look at myself in the eyes is so that myself of 10, 11 years ago could see what's inside of me now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're still there.
Yeah.
I'm still here, and I actually am here in a more grounded way, with more presence, with more peace than I have ever had before.
Mm.
And I would want him to simply feel that. I'd want him to feel and go, oh, I get to be like that? I'm really going to be okay? Because I really am okay. I'm good. And I still have pain and hurt, and that's okay, and I'm good. And I would want him to feel that. Probably beyond what I could say in words. I don't know that I would have words. You're going to be okay.
That's powerful though, right? Because you're showing like, no, look who I have become.
Yeah.
Despite all of the things that have happened.
Because and through.
Yes. And that's why I use the word despite, because it's through it. It's and some of it might be because, but all of it is despite all of that.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I don't remember where in time this evolved, but Kimberly and I both came individually, and then we shared together with each other. And I, especially knowing the audience, I hesitate to say these words, but it just simply is our experience and it's our truth. But we have held that if we were given the power, we would not undo his death.
Wow.
Wow.
All the pain. We save all of that, right? Avoid all of that. The definable and the undefinable impact that his death has had on us and so many others. We would not undo it. And that's hard to come to. And I don't expect that anybody else needs to come to that. It was just our experience of where we came to. Because the impact has been so deep and so far-reaching within our own selves that we couldn't take that away. You know, when we see little signs of that, I remember, 4 or 5 years later, I'm playing tennis with a tennis partner, and he says, yeah, Scott, I ran into somebody and they talked about Keaton. I'm like, what? this far? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you don't know the impact that this has had on people. And I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, honestly, for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience with us and your story and Keaton and everything. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. One of my personal holdings is that all experience is sacred, meaning it all is our individual journey, and it's sacred to us, and it's part of our expansion as beings. And so to be able to share my sacred experience and have you witness it and listen to it, thank you. That's a gift to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Lost Child podcast. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. And remember, shine bright, and we'll see you in the next episode.